Balboa is back. No, not that Balboa. New Riff's Balboa Rye. It was just re-released for the first time in nearly 2 years. But will this year's version be able to live up to the past award-winning renditions and be one of those knockout buys? Let's find out. Hey friends, my name is Brandon Spinner. I am the Whiskey Weatherman, and you have found yourself in the spot where it is always whiskey weather. In today's video, we're checking out this New Riff Balboa Rye, and I'm gonna rate and review it on my 10-point rating scale, which I call the lightning counter. And then we'll see how it ranks versus other bourbons and whiskeys that I have reviewed here, not only this year, but also last year as well. So as I mentioned, Balboa Rye is a re-release of some previous renditions. I believe they had this in 2023. The first rendition was in 2019, and I think they also released at least the high note version in 2020. This has won a lot of awards in the past. It has been one of those that everybody asks for, but will this year's be as good? You might be able to find it a lot easier this time because earlier this year, New Riff announced that they will be distributing in all 50 states. One of the only craft distillers, if not the only craft distillery, to have distribution in all 50 states, which is great. Just like its past predecessors, this is a bottle and bond, so it comes in right at 100 proof, and it says on the bottle, at least 4 years old. If you are not familiar with Balboa Rye, this does have the same mash bill as the previous Balboa Ryes, which is 95% Balboa Rye and 5% malted rye. Not malted barley, but malted rye, which usually gives it a little bit more of a softer feel. So if you don't know what Balboa Rye is, it's an heirloom grain set back into the 30s and 40s. On the bottle it says 1933 vintage heirloom rye grain. I believe Charles Fogg was the first one to introduce it to New Riff. He used to make the old batch. I don't believe they used him to source the grains this time because of some issues there, but I'm not going to go too into depth. One thing that is different from this rendition comparative to the past year's renditions is the price point. And it's actually a much better price point. And the 2023 version came in at $64.99. The MSRP on this year's release, it's supposed to be $54.99, and what made it even better is the other day when I bought this, I got it at an even better price of $51.99, $55 after tax out the door. So will this beat the value of the last one? Probably. Will it be just as good? Let's find out. Right off the nose, I've got like a raspberry, I call it a raspberry tart. There's some caramel to it. There's a little funk, but yeah, it's like really tart. Brown sugars. Some cloves. There's a little bit of that rye spice to it, but it's really not over rye-y on the nose. And of course you get the oak. So in the last 4 years, I live in Cincinnati. This is aged in Covington or Newport, Kentucky, which is basically Cincinnati. And when it comes to the last 4 summers, they've been some of the warmest 4-year stretches that Northern Kentucky and Cincinnati have ever seen. So the weather aspect of this is this had a lot of heat to deal with, and over the last couple of winters, it hasn't been nearly as cold. So it has had a lot of barrel aging time. So this, as a 4-year whiskey, probably has a little bit more characteristics, closer to 5, just because of how the weather aspect played into it. That nose is beautiful. So the first part of my rating scale is, it's a 10-point rating scale. I go with the nose. That nose, I'm giving that a 1.7. Very good. Let's give it a go. Boy, that is beautiful. There's a lot going on. The dark fruit, that red fruit really comes through. I've got plums, raspberries, maybe some raisins to it, but not like the nasty raisins. Like that's got some sweetness to it. Like, raisins, raspberries, very good. Brown sugars come through just like the nose. Some of that rye spiciness comes through. This is very delicious. I think like a raspberry or cherry pie. That's something that kind of reminds me of, that tart feeling, but there's some sweetness. It's not overly rye-y either. I think that malted rye comes through quite a bit, and the fact that it's soft, and that'll probably be more of a mouthfeel thing, but yeah, there's some rye spice to it, but it's more like a cloves and a rye white pepper. That's a very delicious flavor. If I handed this to you, you probably wouldn't guess it was a rye right away. It's got more of the rye characteristics on the backside, but some of that bourbon sweetness, you definitely get some of the char. That's very delicious. I'm also going to 1.7 on the flavor. So 1.7, 1.7, we're sitting at a 3.4. That nose, I'm almost wondering if I underrated the nose. Man. Now let's stick with the 1.7, but boy, that is beautiful. 1.7, 1.7, mouthfeels next. It's definitely, you can definitely tell it's 100 proof. It's not hot, it's warm. It is soft, as I mentioned. It's not something that jumps out to you, but it coats the entire mouth. That is a great mouthfeel. 1.6 is what I'm gonna go with on the mouthfeel on that. I wish there was maybe a little bit more oiliness to it if I had to be critical about it at all, but over a 1.6, very, very good. We're already sitting at a 5.0 out of 10. That's halfway home out of 3 out of them, so very good. Now, the last part before we get to the value, because I go finish and value, is finish, so and this is an easy sipper. 100 proof, $54.99. I'll put this out there. When I first started drinking New Riff, was not a huge fan. Back in 2019, 2020, I thought it was a little too spearminty. I do get some of the slight spearmint from this, but it's more, I'd even say it's got a licorice flavor to it, at least on the finish. The finish is more of the rye, you get more of the rye spice to it on the finish. Call it a rye bread maybe, that's where you get a little bit breadiness. Cinnamons, still have some of the dark fruits as I'm talking, it's still lingering. You get some of the brown sugar still as well. Overall, well-rounded. The finish is great. Yeah, I'm going with a 1.7, 1.6. 1.7, 1.7, 1.6, 1.6. So we're sitting at a 6.6. And when it comes to the value on this, it's gonna be hard to beat $54.99. Very affordable, especially in today's day and age, where most of these new releases are coming in at $80, $90, $100 for a lot of these brand new releases. I'm gonna audible. I did underrate that note, so we're gonna go with 1.8. So let's change that 1.8, 1.7, 1.6, 1.6. So we are now sitting not only at a 6.6, or 6.7, excuse me. We're gonna rate the value as a 1.9. And you may be asking, why not a 2.0? The previous rendition was a $64.99. This is lower than that, but the first time it came out, it was at $49.99, which would be a slam dunk amazing value. This is, I'm not saying this isn't amazing value. 1.9 is almost as good as it can get. If this was at $50, this would be the best valued whiskey probably out there in the last couple of years. This is right up there with the best value of the Wild Turkey 70, that Green River Full Proof from last year. The value on this score, a 1.9. So if my math is correct, that takes this to a total rating score of an 8.6. This is not only a very good whiskey, this is an excellent whiskey. I would buy this. If you saw a bottle of this and it was at $54.99, I bought it at $51.99 and I might have to get a backup bottle. It's a must buy for me every single time. The value is there. Even if you're not a fan of rye whiskey, I would suggest that you give this a shot because this is not your typical rye whiskey. I wouldn't call it a bourbon drinker's rye because I think that's usually when you start to get that 51% rye mash bill, where it's that barely legal rye. But If you're a fan of bourbon and you're trying to get into ryes, I think this would be a good one to try and start with if you can find it. You've got some of those sweet, dark notes that you would get from bourbon. It's not as spicy as you would get from a normal rye. It's soft, and I think that's partly because of the malted rye. But boy, if I had to buy this time and time again, I'd say that this is a must-buy if you ever come across for it on the liquor store shelf, or if you get an email saying it's dropping, or you can find it online, because I do believe that they ship to about 35 different states or something like that. Yeah, that nose is incredible. 1.8, 1.7, 1.6, 1.6, 1.9, 8.6 comes out to be the final rating score, which puts it right at the top of the charts so far here in 2025. And honestly, this is already up there as a contender for a whiskey of the year in my mind. Will it be beaten? Probably. Well, I don't know. There's still 10.5 months to go, but I do think that this is up there. This will probably finish in my top 10, if not my top 20 for 2025. I believe it would have finished in the top 8 of my ratings last year if it was at an 8.6 score. So very well done. Big shout out to New Riff. We'll buy this time and time again. If you did enjoy this video and you like honest, brutally honest reviews, don't forget to hit that like button and hit the subscribe button below, as we're trying to take this channel to a new altitude. Yes, that is a weather pun. I said it in the last video as well. But the best way to actually support this channel, not by even buying Patreon membership or YouTube membership, just share this video with one of your bourbon and whiskey loving friends. That is the best way to support me, as well as spread the love of the Whiskey Weather YouTube universe. As for the love, I do want to throw some love over to my Whiskey Weather Storm Chaser Patreon and YouTube channel members. They are amazing. We continue to grow day by day. Just hit over 115 paying members, and you can join the Storm Chasers anywhere ranging from $3 a month all the way to our new tiers, which are the EF4 and EF5 tiers. You may think that those are new. That's because the tiers levels changed. EF0, EF1, EF2, EF3, EF4, and EF5, all weather terms. And you can join on YouTube or on Patreon by clicking the links below. But I've got amazing Patreon members who continue to support this and take this channel, no pun intended, to that new altitude. We've got a lot of big things coming here in 2025. 2 brand new barrel picks that should be dropping in the middle of March. And we just started a Discord server. So if you're into Discord, it's free for everyone. You don't have to be part of the Patreon or YouTube membership program. That's in the link below. But if you do want to support this channel, help bring this to a new level, or you want access, I'm talking first access to a Buckner's 15 pick and a Pursuit Double Oak, you can join the Whiskey Weather Patreon or YouTube membership program in the links below. I leave you all the same way every time. Please remember to drink responsibly. If you love this video, you're going to love other bourbon and whiskey reviews up there in the top right. And remember, until next time, it is always Whiskey Weather. Cheers, friends.